Okay, here we are in my basement again. I received feedback from two of you that these little movies are helpful. I'm not trying to give you extra work, but if they're helpful, I'll keep making them. This is actually kind of a day late. It should have gone up yesterday, but it's all good. I really want to talk about the papers that you're going to start to have due soon, and just give you an outline about what Unit 3 is about, and then I'll throw up the movie for Unit 4 tomorrow. If you hear banging, by the way, it's because we're having an addition put on our house, so sorry about that. On Friday this week, you have your first assessment paper due. I call them assessment papers. And as far as deadlines go, during a regular course, I have increasingly over the years gotten to the point where I like to give students choices about when papers are due. It just works easier with their schedules. But I think that I'm coming to think that for the purposes of this course, it's just a lot easier if you write your 3 assessment papers on the end of the 2nd, the 4th, and the 6th weeks. And really, please do write one by this Friday, or over the weekend, or by next Monday you can submit it. Like any summer course, deadlines get to be kind of flexible. But you don't want to wait a long time before you start writing your assessment paper, because then you end up with this huge amount of time that you have to cover. It's a really good time to stop about 1850 and write a paper that goes from the 1770s to 1850. And what you are doing with this paper is measuring unity in Vermont. The question is, between the Revolutionary era, when Vermont was founded, to the point where you're finishing, the 1850s, did Vermont grow more or less unified? And so what I want in your introduction is a really clear thesis statement. Just answer the question. More unified, less unified, stayed the same. Whatever makes sense to you is fine with me. I'm not grading you on your answer. I'm grading you on how well you argue it, how well you support your argument of, say, more unity, more unified, or less unified. Which is to say, use the textbook, except Jennifer Goodman, of course, who doesn't have one, and supplement it with a couple of the articles and a bunch of class notes. Organize it chronologically, and just tell it to me like a story. The reason why this is such a great assignment, I've done Vermont history lots of different ways over the years, and the reason I like the assessment papers is that the point of any history class is that it's about you, it's about now. All history is useless unless it's a story that you tell yourself about yourself. And so what I want by the end of the semester you to be able to do is to pick up a copy of the Burlington Free Press or whatever, listen to VPR or whatever, and have a sense about how relatively unified Vermonters are today compared to the past. So really the idea of the course is to wake up Vermont around you, and that's what the assessment papers do for you. What you want to do is give me a really clear thesis statement right at the beginning and in your conclusion, more or less unified, and then give me your evidence in logically organized paragraphs in between. I don't like to give too many directions besides that, because I found that the more I leave these papers open to your creativity, the better the papers are. So you don't have to cover any certain periods or whatever makes sense to you as far as explaining to me whether you think Vermont grew more or less unified, the imagined community of Vermonters grew more or less unified in that era, is fine with me. You do have the 3 basic questions of the course that help you focus on whether Vermont was getting more unified, which is, what is wise use of land, who is a Vermonter, and how do they think that to make life fair. Again, I'm not asking you who you think was a real Vermonter, or if you thought people back then were using land wisely. It's, did people agree then? If everyone back then thought that if you wore really funny giant hats or something like that, and that made life fair, whether or not you think that makes life fair or not is not the point. The point is, did people back then think that that's what made life fair? Okay? So just judge people in the past on their own terms. Did they agree or not agree? You don't need to address all 3 questions. They're just guidelines to help you focus and to make it seem easier, hopefully. Please do get me your first assessment paper and ask me any questions you want, please, about it before then. One more thing which is really, really, really important is citations. I am not a stickler on form of citations. I think wasting a lot of time on form is not the point. The point is what I need to have is to be able to retrace your steps. So that is to say, I need the author's name and the page number where you got the information, or the title of the article or the book, Freedom and Unity, and the page number. So if you put down Freedom and Unity, page 112, that's great. You can do it in parenthetical citations, you can do it in footnotes or endnotes, whatever you prefer. But I need citations. I can't reward you for the work you've done and the reading you've done unless you give me citations. Cool? Alright, cool. Also, we have another town meeting at the end of this week, as we do every week. Whether or not you write a town meeting paper, please do respond on the discussion board to the questions about the 4 primary documents this time. 3 or 4, we'll see how many I put up. Probably 3 actually, because of the response I got to the first one. There is also a handout, a assignment sheet in the part 2 folder for this town meeting, and when you write the paper, have fun with it. You know, write it like a really angry, vitriolic letter to the editor of a newspaper, or a letter to a friend, or a journal entry, or whatever. The key points are on the handout, but describe yourself as a true Vermonter, claim the founders of the state as people like you, insult people who are unlike you. If you're a downhiller, call the uphillers uncouth slobs and rednecks and whatever you want to do like that, or uphillers call downhillers fancy pants snobs and things, whatever is fun for you. Town meeting papers are supposed to be fun. You have 5 chances to write 3 of those. You don't have to write one this week, but you do need to write 3 by the end of the semester, 3 different town meetings. Okay? Sound good? Maybe not? Ask me questions. So look at the folder, just nail down, make sure in Unit 3 you have nailed down the uphill-downhill divide. There's a folder of maps, and look at like Shrewsbury or Pownall. What you'll see is that the original village usually is called Center, the town center, and it was located in the geographic center of town. It was formed by uphillers, and it exists up on top of a hill. And then when downhillers came in town after town after town across the state, they settled down in the river valleys where they had better access to the outside world and where the economic activity was going on, the mill village. And so it's a geographical divide, and that's a way of orienting yourself. But of course what it really is about is ideology. It's their worldview. And on the unit outline there is a list of the characteristics, the adjectives associated with uphillers and downhillers. So just definitely acquaint yourself with that. It says the first generation uphillers, downhillers. Just make sure you get that part of the outline read through. And then the other 2 parts of what's important about this unit is, number 1, what's the most important thing about downhillers and uphillers? And so there's a story about a murder trial that took place in 1819 in Manchester, Vermont. And what happened was a guy got murdered by his brothers-in-law, two brother-in-law, and then, or he didn't get murdered maybe, the brothers-in-law said that he ran off. They were arrested 7 years after the fight, and the 2 brothers were, and convicted of the murder of this guy, Russell Colvin. But they claimed that he was still alive, he still existed. And he, as someone who was from Manchester who lived in New York City, had seen Russell Colvin in New Jersey, tracked him down, brought him up to Manchester. To make a very long story brief, and what happened was Russell Colvin, the downhillers who were the lawyers, were convinced it was the real Russell Colvin. But we'll never know, because uphillers don't tell downhillers their secrets. In other words, downhillers don't understand uphillers. They don't understand why they drink the beer they drink, and why they drive the cars they drive, and listen to the music they listen to. And the point of this, uphillers don't tell downhillers their secrets, is that there is a level of community that downhillers never reach. I live in a small town called Danville, and I love the town and I love the uphillers who live here, but there is a level of community, a depth of community that can only be built up over multiple generations, and that really involves the people who have not only their ancestors were there and they're going to stay there, but also their kids are going to live there, and multiple generations after that. That's community is not physical. It's not rocks and trees and buildings. Community is shared experiences, and so there's a level of shared experiences that downhillers can never penetrate, and uphillers never tell downhillers their secrets. The next story, the other important point, is that uphillers don't see the big picture, and I illustrate this with a story about a Danville story. What happens is the Champlain Canal gets cut, and those of you who've taken the first half of the survey, history, what is it, 1211, whatever you're, having taught it at UVM over and over again. Anyway, up to 1865, you know that capitalist transformation kicked in big time in the 1820s. The Erie Canal and the Champlain Canal thrust capitalist imperatives into the countryside. People got very disoriented, and one of the products of that was the anti-Masonic movement. People who subscribed to it hated Masonic lodges because they represented concentrated power in invisible places. And in Danville, a town that was in decline compared to St. Johnsbury, the uphill people in Danville were convinced that the guy who owned the store, the richest man in town, was exploiting them, and he was doing this in concert with other wealthy people in the area in the Masonic Lodge. So in the end they chased the wealthiest guy out of town, and if you chase away the wealthiest guy in a town that's already in decline, you're not going to reverse the town's decline. It got worse. So the message being that uphillers don't see the big picture, which is important. You'll see this a lot in the future. Uphillers don't understand how the streams that run through their backyards are connected to giant river systems. They don't understand why they need to modify their behavior for regional or statewide or national needs and implications. They only really see their backyards, their back 40s, and what goes on right in front of them. So downhillers don't understand uphillers. They never will. And uphillers don't see the big picture. And that's what you want to get out of Unit 3. Sounds good? Cool. All right.